Spider-Man Brand New Day is far more than another superhero adventure. It is a story about identity, loneliness, and finally accepting every part of yourself. For years after the heartbreaking ending of Spider-Man No Way Home, Peter Parker has spent his life protecting a city that no longer remembers him. His greatest battle is no longer against supervillains, but against isolation itself. By the end of the story, Peter embraces both sides of who he is. Jean Grey begins a hopeful new chapter, Ned unexpectedly remembers Peter, and the post-credits scene points directly toward Marvel's next massive crossover. The opening immediately establishes how much Peter's life has changed, with the world forgetting both Spider-Man's secret identity and, for the most part, Peter Parker himself. Peter has become exactly what Aunt May always believed he should be. A true friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He spends his days stopping ordinary criminals across New York instead of fighting universe-ending threats. Although he continues saving countless lives, every victory comes with the painful reminder that he has nobody waiting for him when the mask comes off. Aunt May is gone. MJ and Ned have moved on with their lives. Peter exists almost like a ghost in the city he protects. That loneliness becomes even more dangerous when his own body begins changing. Rather than simply relying on the powers audiences already know, Peter starts developing completely new abilities. Organic webbing begins replacing his mechanical web shooters. His senses become dramatically stronger. At the same time, frightening black eyes and sudden losses of control suggest something inside him is evolving into something unpredictable. Rather than embracing those changes immediately, Peter fears becoming a danger to everyone around him. To suppress the mutations, he creates inhibitor technology. The devices help regulate his changing biology, but come with serious flaws. Whenever they overheat, Peter risks losing control completely. This physical struggle mirrors the emotional conflict running throughout the entire story. Peter constantly tries to suppress parts of himself instead of accepting them. The arrival of Jean Grey completely changes everything. At first, she appears to be the story's primary villain. Using powerful telepathic abilities, she jumps between different people's minds and bodies, creating chaos throughout New York. Her actions force Peter back toward the people he deliberately left behind after Doctor Strange's spell erased everyone's memories. One of the most uncomfortable moments arrives when Jean possesses MJ. Using MJ's body, Jean manipulates Peter emotionally and even kisses him. The scene is intentionally disturbing because it is never truly MJ making those choices. Later, when Peter apologizes, MJ has absolutely no memory of the incident. That detail becomes one of the biggest clues exposing the truth behind Jean's actions and Bill Metzger's lies. As Peter searches for answers, he receives help from several unexpected allies. Yelena Belova assists him with his mysterious condition, while Bruce Banner becomes involved after damage control's activities spiral out of control. Frank Castle also returns, reluctantly honoring an old favor Peter once earned involving Staten Island. Despite Frank's brutal methods, the story repeatedly shows there is genuine respect between the two men. At Frank's heavily fortified hideout, Peter finally begins understanding both his changing powers and Jean herself. Working together with MJ, they discover that Peter's inhibitor technology has been overheating because of its own design. The goggles sit too close to the regulating chip. Once corrected, the equipment becomes significantly more stable. During this conversation, MJ quietly makes one of the story's most important observations. She says the technology could restrain a monster. Then she immediately makes it clear she does not believe Peter is one. Even without remembering their history together, she instinctively recognizes the goodness inside him. Meanwhile, Jean continues searching damage control headquarters for something called VMAX. Her actions initially appear random and destructive. Only later does the audience realize she is desperately searching for the truth about her own past. Damage control eventually becomes the center of the film's biggest action sequence. Jean takes control of Bruce Banner, forcing Hulk into battle against Spider-Man. Peter cannot overpower Hulk through strength alone. Instead, he appeals to Bruce's humanity. Even after Hulk loses control, Peter refuses to abandon him. When Hulk falls, Spider-Man catches him with his webs instead of allowing him to crash to the ground. It is another reminder that Peter's greatest strength has never been violence. It has always been compassion. Inside the facility, Jean possesses Frank Castle to access a heavily protected vault. Peter finally manages to attach one of his inhibitors to Jean, temporarily shutting down her powers. As she collapses, she whispers one mysterious name. Sarah. Bill Metzger quickly claims Jean simply pulled the name from his own memories. That explanation eventually proves to be completely false. Back at Frank's hideout, another emotional storyline reaches its conclusion. MJ discovers the letter Peter wrote years earlier after Doctor Strange's spell. Peter finally explains why he walked away from her. After losing Aunt May to the Green Goblin, he simply could not bear the thought of losing MJ as well. He admits he never stopped loving her. MJ's response is heartbreaking. The spell worked. She does not know him. She does not share those memories. She cannot return feelings she no longer understands. Although painful, the conversation finally gives Peter the closure he has needed since the end of Spider-Man: No Way Home. Later, Peter quietly apologizes for the kiss that happened while Jean controlled MJ. MJ has no recollection of it whatsoever. That single detail confirms Bill Metzger lied about Sarah from the very beginning. Using Ned's computer, Peter contacts Yelena, who uncovers the truth. Sarah was never an imaginary name. She was Jean Grey's younger sister. The story's biggest revelation follows shortly afterwards. A flashback finally exposes what really happened. After Jean and Sarah's mother abandoned them because they were mutants, Damage Control kidnapped both sisters. Bill Metzger supervised horrifying experiments designed to push their telepathic abilities beyond normal limits. The project's true objective was creating living weapons. During one experiment, Sarah died. Her final message to Jean was not a mysterious code at all. She was trying to save Aunt Max, the label on the ventilation system above her experimental chair. Jean had spent years searching for the wrong meaning because nobody ever allowed her to finish hearing the truth. The revelation completely shatters her emotionally. Overwhelmed by grief and rage, Jean unleashes an enormous psychic blast that freezes huge sections of the city. She tears away Peter's inhibitor before releasing members of the Hand to attack him. Their weapons are specially designed to destroy Spider-Man's artificial webbing. The plan immediately falls apart because Peter no longer needs artificial webs. His new organic webbing continues functioning perfectly. Even more importantly, Peter finally stops hiding from himself. Instead of replacing the destroyed inhibitor, he removes it completely. When Jean asks whether he is truly Peter Parker or Spider-Man, Peter finally gives the answer he has spent the entire story searching for. He is both. That moment represents the emotional heart of the entire ending. Peter no longer sees his humanity and his powers as separate identities competing against each other. They are equally important parts of the same person. By embracing that truth, he gains complete control over himself instead of allowing fear to define him. The final confrontation then becomes far more personal than physical. Peter begs Jean not to kill Bill Metzger. Revenge will never bring Sarah back. Jean traps Peter inside a psychic illusion built around one of his happiest memories with Aunt May. There, Aunt May speaks directly to Jean. She tells her that people may hurt her because she is different, but those who truly love her never love her because of her powers. They love her because she is simply herself. Peter joins the conversation and tells Jean something she has needed to hear her entire life. Just because they have lost someone does not mean they have to face the future alone. Jean quietly admits she has nobody left. Peter answers with one simple promise: "You have me." It becomes the emotional turning point that finally breaks Jean's anger. Just as hope begins returning, tragedy almost strikes. Peter senses a sniper's bullet at the very last moment and throws Jean out of danger. The shot critically wounds him instead. Frank immediately realizes he unknowingly fired the bullet and rushes Peter to hospital. The aftermath reveals just how much Spider-Man truly means to New York. News spreads that he may not survive. People gather across the city holding candlelight vigils. The Empire State Building glows in red and blue. Even though nobody knows Peter Parker, everyone knows Spider-Man. Jean uses her telepathic abilities to keep Peter's consciousness alive until his body can recover. Eventually, he awakens from his coma. Frank helps him leave the hospital unnoticed by disguising himself as Spider-Man in the hospital window, allowing the waiting crowd to believe their hero is still recovering inside. Jean's own journey ends on a hopeful note. She visits the park bench where she once sat with Sarah before boarding a bus heading toward rural upstate New York. The destination is strongly implied to be the X-Mansion, suggesting she may finally find the family and acceptance she has always wanted. Peter's story concludes with another emotional milestone. Standing beside Aunt May's grave, he promises he will no longer carry every burden alone. For the first time since the spell erased him from everyone's lives, Peter actively chooses connection instead of isolation. The final scene then delivers perhaps the biggest emotional surprise of the entire story. While speaking with Detective Jean DeWolf, Peter learns Bill Metzger has disappeared. Moments later, Ned enters the same shop. Peter introduces himself like a complete stranger. Instinctively, the two perform their old best friend handshake without thinking. Then something extraordinary happens. Ned looks directly at him and quietly says one word: "Peter." Whether the spell is weakening, their friendship is simply too powerful to erase completely, or something else is happening remains unanswered. What matters is the hope it creates. After years of complete isolation, Peter may finally be getting part of his old life back. The post-credits scene then expands the story far beyond Earth. Ned's Spider-Man tracker suddenly detects Peter's signal well beyond the moon. The status simply reads off-planet. The tease strongly points toward the events of Avengers: Secret Wars, suggesting Spider-Man's next adventure will take him far beyond New York and into one of Marvel's biggest stories yet. Overall, Spider-Man Brand New Day delivers one of the franchise's most emotional endings. Rather than focusing on defeating a traditional villain, the story explores healing after loss, accepting every part of yourself, and choosing hope instead of isolation. Jean Grey finally escapes the people who stole her childhood. Peter embraces both his humanity and his extraordinary abilities. And the unexpected recognition from Ned offers the strongest sign yet that some bonds are simply too powerful for even magic to erase. Instead of closing Peter Parker's story, the ending opens an exciting new chapter where he no longer has to choose between being Peter Parker and Spider-Man. He has finally accepted that he can, and always will, be both.